Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of wonder if it's just kind of evidence that video games as a whole, and this includes both casual and hardcore games, they've truly become mainstream. And I've kind of wondered if perhaps what we're sort of seeing is like a demarcation similar to like in movies, the demarcation between those beautifully made, pretentious, boring foreign films that Zander, I'm sure, loves, and the latest Michael Bay explosion fest. And if with games, it's the same thing, except that the artistic game is modern warfare, and
oh dear,
I feel like you have that backwards. But,
oh dear.
Well, okay, I mean, yeah, the modern game is the artistic game is BioShock Infinite, but I mean, we're going with the hardcore games that the hardcore gamers all play.
Right.
Well, I think
they love their modern warfare, so I don't. And then the Michael Bay explosion fest, strangely enough, is Bejeweled or
right to complete that metaphor. And yeah, I mean, since we've talked about casual games, we should definitely touch on its opposite, perhaps maybe not opposite, but the
term that we have juxtaposed
as hardcore games. Hardcore and now hardcore games would be people who spend a lot more time on their game on the game.
Yes.
Specifically to either develop skills or develop
levels,
leveling up items,
improving a character,
that kind of thing.
Right. These are games that have a decent time commitment. Most of the time you're not going to sit down for 15 minutes. You're probably going to sit down for an hour or two, or God forbid,
games,
even longer.
Yeah, I mean, these games would be your World of Warcrafts.
Sure, your Memorpagers,
MMORPGs.
Massively multiplayer online role-playing games.
Yes.
For those who don't know.
And
Evercrack.
Yeah, and it's not to say, and I need to clarify because some people are going to be confused here. It's not to say that you can't sit down and play a casual game for a very long amount of time.
Right.
You can. What's different is that in the casual game, that small amount of time or that large amount of time is still going to make progress, or you're going to get something done, or you're going to feel accomplished. With a hardcore game, you generally need to put that solid amount of time in to get that accomplishment.
Right, and
that's the difference.
Hardcore games usually include games that are competitive. A lot of them are shooters, I would say.
Some.
Or strategy games, like you look at games like StarCraft or the Call of Duty series, and those games have huge fan bases. Mm-hmm. Lots of people play them, and they play them competitively.
Yeah.
And they're even venues where money is exchanged in terms of like people, one team wins over another, or one person wins over another, and
yes.
Even fighting games, I would say to some extent are hardcore games.
Well, I would say the main difference is that while both casual and hardcore games have sort of a single player or a solo player aspect, casual games tend to have, when it's multiplayer, a cooperative sort of feel, mm-hmm. whereas with hardcore that tends to turn into a more competitive feel.
Individualistic, sort of everyone for themselves, kind of. Even if you are on a team, you're still looking to outperform everyone else on your team.
Well, the other team as well as your own teammates.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. What were you going to say, Trevor?
Oh, I think that's, certainly correct, the competitive versus cooperative thing. I mean, I think the main difference is really just the development of a skill set. Like, to be a hardcore gamer, you have to practice playing the game.
Right.
I mean, frankly, you can hop online and play Modern Warfare for 15 minutes and hop offline.
True. Yeah.
You don't need to sit down for 3 hours to play some Modern Warfare online or whatever else. But I mean, you have to spend some time getting good at Modern Warfare so that your 15 minutes online at a stretch is not you getting blown away 10 times and getting called a noob and certain other things that are probably not appropriate for this podcast.
Yeah, it's a hefty time commitment that, if properly placed, can turn into more of a 15 minutes at a time thing, if that's what you want it to be.
And these games can definitely become very, very dangerous in terms of, almost more than casual games, I would say, because, we know a couple people who play, especially MMORPGs,
yeah.
and have sunk, you look at the average like World of Warcraft player, and you know how many hours per week are they sinking into that?
Right.
It's like it's upwards of 30, even 40 sometimes, which is like how much time the average person spends at work.
And in some with some people, it's not even a game as much as it's simply a science anymore. Like I know people that like this is on the real scary end of the spectrum. Like they'll be playing WoW or whatever, and they'll have all these different spreadsheets and charts out, and they're calculating numbers, and they're like, "I'm playing WoW," and I'm like, "You're doing math.
You're doing math. Yes.
You're doing math.
If math.
Both.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Civilization player trying to beat the computer at the deity level.
It's like now you've like seen the man behind the curtain, and you're like quantifying everything.
Exactly. I mean, the problem is,
are you really playing anymore?
When you have the game open, but then you also have Excel open, like, is that really a game anymore?
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of playing a game at the level where I have to actually think about the numbers going on behind it.
And what's interesting is both in terms of the highly addictive social casual games as well as the hardcore ones, you have that social element embedded.
Right.
In order to really advance your farm, you have to get friends, and in WoW, in order to beat this mission, your raid party has got to be in tip-top shape.
I mean, the problem is, with certain games, are you worried about puzzle solving in a more simple form, or are you looking at like numbers like your DPS or your AOE type your numbers? Like it's like a lot of people just look at that stuff and they're like, whoa, this is way too complicated and I don't want to touch this. But then you have the other section of people who are just like, oh my god, just give me those spreadsheets.
Yeah,
spreadsheets, please.
And for the listener, if you don't know what DPS or AOE means, that's fine. That means you're doing okay.
You are good, and you are probably a successful and productive member of society.
Trevor?
I know what those mean, and I kind of feel honored that I really do belong here, but then I realize that we're in a basement, and now I'm depressed again.
Okay. But yeah, hardcore games are generally competitive. They are generally have a tough learning curve. They involve a pretty hefty time commitment at the beginning, and they can frequently involve having to pay to play pretty frequently. Pay to play. Either through a Xbox Live subscription or through a monthly fee to whatever Memorpager you subscribe to. And a lot of people look at these games and they say, this is what's right with gaming, and this is how gaming should be. And then other people say, well, that's a pretty hefty barrier to entry, and that's not really fair. And I think now that we've sort of debunked the idea that casual gaming is bad, I think it's also important to look at hardcore gaming and say, is hardcore gaming the panacea? Is hardcore gaming what we want? The cure-all? Is this really where gaming should go? And I think what we sort of touched on, and we can get at this more later, is the idea that Trevor's absolutely right. Gaming is becoming a modern part of society. And I think, simply put, I would put that as everyone is approaching gaming at whatever sort of angle they're comfortable with, essentially. It's becoming a large part of society. But not everyone's like, now we haven't decided on this is gaming and everyone's confronting that. Everyone's just simply reaching gaming at whatever, comfort point they have.
There's sort of a we were talking about sort of time commitments as far as casual versus hardcore, but I think we could also say that there are people who play casual games for a long time. People who spend 6 hours a day, if not more, either with the game running in the background so that they can play it every once in a while, or people who just play casual games only. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who play shooters or MMORPGs for the same amount of time, and so can you really use time commitment as a standard for casual versus hardcore games? Right.
No, absolutely. I mean, there is the stereotype that casuals pick up and play, and the stereotype that hardcore is 9 hours a day. But these are stereotypes.
I mean, it probably just refers to entry level skill.
Yeah, I think it might be fair to say the learning curve is steeper, and just leave it at that. I mean,
right, and that's
and
sort
the potential. Like, the minimal time commitment is less.
Right.
Not the maximum possible, which I think is what Nick was trying to say. Not that you can't sit down and have a 9-hour Bejeweled session.
You can. And it
can
easily happen.
Nick apparently has.
Zuma. I'd recommend the game, but it ruined my life.
It's the same thing as recommending heroin. So don't do that.
Yeah, heroin is for the weak. I recommend just the lighter opiates.
Don't listen to him. He doesn't do any.
It's
of that.
addictive, but your kids believe you. But then again, that might be a pro for some
That
people.
might be your goal.
Yeah.
So
Bonus. No.
All right, now I'm gonna try to bring this back to seriousness. What
Damn it, Trevor.
come on.
actually what you were saying earlier, Nick, though, about what was it about I can't even remember now, the types of, like, when you were talking about hardcore games and the kinds and the types and
Sure. In terms of like genres or
no I can't even remember now.
like competitive, or what are you getting at?
Well, what I was actually, I think what I was thinking of is that I was thinking of my movie analogy with the hardcore games are art films,
being the
apparently,
art
and
films.
casual games are Michael Bay movies.
Right. It's Modern Warfare versus Okami.
Well,
Essentially.
no, because what he's saying is it's Modern Warfare as the art film versus Bejeweled as the Michael Bay film.
Yeah,
but
that's...
I think there's a better analogy, because if you look at art style within games, I think that you look at, like what Nick was saying, the Okamis as the as the art films versus the ones that appeal to the mass audience, like Call of Duty, as the Michael Bay action film.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at. That I think it's interesting that because as you were saying, I think it was that hardcore gamers think that they're true gamers, that they're
right. Well, it's sort of they've wanted to create this sort of high culture, low culture divide.
Right.
Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly what I think I'm trying to get at. The
Like
high culture,
every art form.
high culture, low culture. That's brilliant. But I think within the high culture side with gaming, I think it's interesting how you can see how, a lot of the high culture, it's not all that unique or interesting necessarily. I mean, I saw something online where it was a screenshot of like 5 recent first-person shooters.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
Modern Warfare. I guess Modern Warfare 3 now, is that out
What
yet?
was the catch? Well, they put out some teaser
I've
trailers.
seen
Teaser
but
trailers, yeah.
What was the
And,
catch?
like,
They all look the same? Or?
Yeah, they all look the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Well,
And-
but that's an issue within
Yeah.
first-person shooter
Yeah.
games, and that's a different sort
Well,
of issue.
I think what's sort of another thing about hardcore gaming is that I think hardcore gamers seriously like the idea that hardcore gaming is unapproachable. It's
Right.
something which has a barrier to entry, and they don't want everyone barging down the door.
Well,
I
because
think
it takes a lot more skill. I mean, as an example, I was playing Half-Life 2.
Would you call that hardcore or not?
Well, regardless, the issue was it requires a different sort of skill. Like, my mom plays stuff like Breakout, Peggle, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And she came down and saw me playing Half-Life 2, and I, for some reason, there was some issue with the control scheme or something, and I kept dying in this elevator. For people who've played Half-Life 2, you're in an elevator and there's pieces of something falling down, and you have to shoot them away from the elevator to keep it from breaking the elevator you're standing on. Yeah. So you're trying to hit this with the grav gun, but you're trying to look up at the same time.
Yeah.
And my mom comes down and she watches me die like 10 times in a row, and she's like, "Hey, can I try?" And I'm like, "Fine,
Shut
give
up,
it a
Mom."
go." I figured no, because I figured I'd give it to her.
Yeah.
She'd give,
She'd
she'd
die.
try, she would die, and then she would leave. But she and that's pretty much what happened. Is she couldn't figure out the controls of moving the character's body and head separately.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about
That's
someone
a huge
else.
barrier to entry in its own right.
Right, and it's that sort of the perception and it's a different kind of skill rather than just pointing and clicking. And I think for people who are not perspectively inclined in terms of awareness, it is definitely a barrier, and you definitely have to put in a lot of time in order to be able to play those games with any sort of proficiency.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a decent number of hardcore gamers too who I think we might have been discussing this earlier about how a lot of them have been playing for a long time, and they might have been playing back on like the original PlayStation or even the NES or Super NES. They'll say that this makes them a better kind of gamer because they've been playing for so long, and they're somehow a morally better gamer because of it.
Yeah.
That time commitment and that amount of time, just means that they know more about games and what gaming should be